Welcome back to the podcast. For this episode, we wanted to dive deeper into the high level of options writing, aka selling options to generate income. As mentioned in the last episode, each episode that follows will continue to build upon the previous episode in order to build your foundation of knowledge into various aspects of selling options. With that said, let's get this party started with our hosts, Adam and Isla.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into options writing as a way to create income, especially for those in retirement or anyone facing a job transition. We've got a ton of research and articles here, and believe me, some of these strategies are really mind-blowing. Just imagine supplementing retirement income or even replacing a lost job by strategically, like renting out your stocks. Pretty intriguing, right? So let's unpack this.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more exciting than just, buy and hold. We're talking about sort of like tapping into a different side of the market here, where you can potentially be generating income regardless of whether the market goes up or down or sideways.
Okay, so that sounds almost too good to be true. So how does that even work? Our sources mention something called options premiums. Is that the key here?
Yeah, you got it. When you sell an option or write one, as it's called, you'll receive a premium upfront. Kind of like think of it like collecting rent on a property. But instead of a property, it's a stock you own.
I like that analogy. So someone pays me to have the option to buy my stock later. But why would they want to do that?
Well, essentially, they're betting on the future movement of that stock. They're paying for the right, but not the obligation, to buy or sell your shares at a certain price within a specific time frame. And it's interesting because they could be betting the price is going to go up or even down.
Okay, so that's where it starts to get a little complex, right? What are the most common ways that people use options for income?
Two popular strategies that people use are covered calls and cash-secured puts. So, for example, let's say you own 100 shares of Apple, and it's currently trading at, let's just say, $170 a share. And you believe in Apple long-term, but you wouldn't mind selling at $180. So in that case, you could sell a covered call option with a strike price of $180, with, let's say, a one-month expiry.
Okay, so if Apple stays below $180, I get to keep my shares and I pocket that premium, which you said is like rent. But if it goes above $180, then my shares get called away at that price.
Exactly. You would miss out on any gains above $180, but you still get to profit from the premium and any share price appreciation up to that $180. So you're basically making a trade-off. You're capping your potential upside for some guaranteed income. Now let's flip that scenario around. Imagine you're interested in buying Apple, but you think $170 is a bit too expensive. That's where these cash-secured puts come in.
Okay, so instead of owning Apple, I'm getting ready to buy it at a lower price, and I get paid for my willingness to do that.
You got it. So you sell a put option, let's just say with a strike price of $160, and again with a one-month expiry, so you'll collect the premium up front. If Apple stays above $160, you keep that premium, no stock purchase is needed. If it falls below $160, you buy those shares at $160.
So in both of those cases, I'm making some income,
Yeah.
but there is the potential for my shares to be sold or for me to be forced to buy shares, right? Seems like there's a lot to manage here. It's not really a set it and forget it type of investing.
You hit the nail on the head. It's super important to understand, the specific details of each of these strategies and have a plan for different, market outcomes.
For sure. And our sources all seem to stress how important it is to have that deep understanding of how options work. Not something to jump into without doing your research first, huh?
Definitely not. In fact, one source highlighted the potential for substantial losses, especially if the market moves against your position.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely a sobering thought. It sounds like options writing requires a whole different level of knowledge than, just buying and holding index funds. What are some resources for someone who wants to learn more?
Well, several sources recommend reputable online courses, books by some experienced options traders, and even some mentorship programs if you can find them. So it's really an ongoing learning process.
Okay, so there's definitely a learning curve. It's not as simple as just picking a stock and hoping for the best. But I am curious. Let's say someone loses their job and they're looking for a way to kind of like replace that income. Could options writing realistically be an option for them?
Well, it's theoretically possible, but it's extremely challenging to rely solely on options income, especially during a job transition period. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, and it often required a pretty significant amount of starting capital.
So it's more realistic to think of it as a way to supplement other income sources rather than replacing a full-time job right away.
Exactly. It's about diversification, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Plus, you've got to factor in the time it takes to learn and develop a consistent strategy.
But now I'm kind of wondering about all this talk about risk management. Are there specific tools or techniques that successful options traders use? I mean, we're not just like throwing darts at a board here, are we?
Right, definitely not. There's a lot more to it than just picking a stock and, crossing your fingers. One of the most crucial aspects of options trading is understanding and managing your risk. You can kind of think of it like uh, building a house. You need a really solid foundation.
Okay, I like that analogy. So what would you say are like the foundational building blocks of options risk management?
Well, one really important one is diversification. Just like, you wouldn't put all your money into a single stock. You don't want to put all of your options trades into just one company or one sector. Spreading your risk across different assets can help to really buffer against losses.
Okay, makes sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But what about those what-if scenarios? Like what if a stock price just totally plummets? Are there ways to protect yourself from like those really big swings?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where things like stop loss orders and hedging strategies come in. So a stop loss order is kind of like an insurance policy. It automatically sells your position if that price drops below a certain level that you set. So it can really help to limit your potential losses.
Ah, so it's kind of like a safety net to keep things from getting out of control. And what about hedging? Is that kind of like buying insurance too?
It's a similar idea. Hedging involves taking a position in a related asset that will kind of offset the potential losses in your main position. It's all about, counterbalancing your risk.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're not just betting on one outcome. But with all these different tools and techniques, it seems like options trading can be super time consuming. What about someone who's working full time or juggling other responsibilities? Can they realistically manage options trades, alongside everything else?
Yeah, it's definitely a valid concern. Options trading does require a certain amount of time commitment, especially if you're really actively managing your positions. But the good news is there are a lot of tools and resources out there that can really help to kind of streamline that process.
Oh, really? So it's not like you have to be glued to your computer screen 24/7 watching every little market tick.
Not necessarily. There are platforms out there that allow you to set up alerts, to automate trades and monitor your positions from anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection.
So technology can definitely make things a little bit easier. But let's be real for a second. Options trading can be pretty emotionally challenging too. So how do you deal with those inevitable losses? How do you advise people to kind of manage the psychological ups and downs of the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, it's one that's often overlooked. One of the biggest mental hurdles for traders is dealing with, that fear of missing out. It's easy to see other people, making quick profits and be tempted to jump into trades that maybe don't really align with your overall strategy.
Right, it's like that saying, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So how do you avoid getting caught up in that whole emotional roller coaster?
Having a well-defined trading plan is absolutely crucial. It's like having a roadmap that keeps you focused on your long-term goals. Even when things start to get a little bit crazy in the market, it's also super important to set realistic expectations. Options trading is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and losses are going to happen. They're a part of the process.
That's a good reminder for all of us. Speaking of losses, how do you manage those psychologically? How do you come back from a bad trade without letting it, totally destroy your confidence?
I think it's really important to view losses as learning opportunities, not as personal failures. So take some time to analyze what went wrong, see if you need to adjust your strategy, and then just move on. Remember, even the most successful traders experience losses from time to time. It's all part of the game.
So it's all about that growth mindset, right? Learning from your mistakes and not letting emotions get in the way of your judgment. That's good advice not just for options trading, but honestly for life in general. As we've been talking about all these different strategies, one thing that's really kind of hit me is how options writing can shift our whole perspective on what it means to generate income.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. How so?
Well, I think most of us, grow up with this idea that income is something you earn from a job. Or maybe it's something that comes from investments like dividends, something that's, pretty fixed and predictable. But options feel different, more active. It's almost like you're creating income rather than just receiving it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It really does challenge that traditional view of income.
Exactly. It almost feels like a form of financial entrepreneurship.
Right.
You're creating your own income streams
Yeah.
based on your knowledge and your analysis of the market.
Yeah, and I think that resonates with a lot of people today. especially with the rise of remote work and the whole gig economy. There's this desire for more autonomy and control, not just over their time, but over their finances as well.
And it's not just about the money either. One of our sources mentioned the intellectual stimulation and the constant learning that comes with options trading. It's like a constantly evolving puzzle,
Mm.
and you're always trying to stay one step ahead.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely keeps you engaged, challenges that old view of retirement as this passive phase of life.
Totally. I mean, imagine retiring from a traditional 9 to 5,
Sure.
but then finding like a whole new intellectual challenge
Yeah.
and a potential income stream through options writing. That's pretty empowering.
It is. And it also highlights another interesting aspect of options, the way they can change our whole relationship with risk.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Well, think about how we usually approach investing. We're taught to minimize risk as much as possible, diversify our portfolios, aim for slow and steady growth. But with options writing, you're not just mitigating risk, you're actively trying to profit from it.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful shift in perspective.
Right.
It's like turning risk into an opportunity.
But it requires a different mindset. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty and the possibility of losses, but also have the confidence to make those strategic decisions and manage those risks.
So it's not about getting rid of risk completely, but about understanding it, calculating it, and using it as a part of your overall strategy. Big difference from the traditional buy and hold approach.
It is. And that's why education is so critical when it comes to options trading. You really need to make sure you have a good grasp of, how they work, the risks involved,
Yeah.
and all the different strategies before you even think about placing a trade.
Right. It's not something to just dive into head first. But for those who are willing to put in the time and the effort, it seems like options writing can open up a whole new world of possibilities, both financially and intellectually.
I completely agree.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought-provoking question that we can leave our listeners with?
How about this? How might exploring options writing, even on a small scale or through a simulator, change your own perspective on, things like income generation, risk management, or even your whole financial strategy? It's definitely something to think about and maybe even experiment with a little as you continue on your path toward, financial empowerment.
That's a great question. It encourages that continued learning and exploration, which is what the deep dive is all about. And to our listener, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into options income. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of new ideas.
Thanks, Adam and Isla. As our host mentioned, one great way to start learning about how to write, aka sell options to generate income, is by mentorship and coaching. If you want to learn how to get started, then we welcome you to contact us about coaching sessions. Just leave a comment here for us or send us a message on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. You can find us on X at selling4premium, all one word. Make sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast for future episodes. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.